the best predictor we've got is always past performance. It's never anything like this. This is just for fun, you know, and just to kind of get the juices flowing, get the brain thinking in certain ways about training and how it relates to racing. And like, how can we catch the kind of the stuff that's hard to see as coaches within metrics that can really show people, you can really, like, you know, show our athletes the way towards better performance. So this is just kind of the introduction page. Useful metrics throughout this, the next couple pages are the total time you're going to come up with using your 500 freestyle splits. We'll call that the 400 meter base time. Actually, I think later in this, I'm changing that to total time. Then the predictor chart, which is the last slide. And we're going to use the 400 meter base time, and we're going to plug it into the chart at the very end to kind of really see what this is all about. Okay, so let's figure this out here. And I've got some notes here on actually some of these people's splits. Well, they're also at the end, so we'll take a look at it. So what I did, so I'm looking at these Olympic trial finalist men, U.S. men that swam in the final. You know, we had Kieran Smith going 344 and winning. And then we've got a bunch of guys going 347, 348, 349, 350. And some of them are doing it in the morning, didn't make it back that night, at night. And then I also looked at Zane Grothe and his 400 meter freestyle 345 swim that he did earlier this year, compared it to his best 400 or best 407 500-yard freestyle splits, right? So I want to come up with something that's a predictor based off of these athletes' 500 splits. So I'm looking at Meet Mobile, and I'm going through NC2As, and I'm looking at the final, and I'm like basically figuring out, I'm like writing down all of their last 4 splits. Let's see this. And I'm writing them down. This is like my scrap paper, right? And what I did was I added 1 second to the last split. So I'm writing down 4 numbers. It's the second, the third, the fourth, and the 5th time. And basically what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to scroll through so you can actually see it, because you can go through the other stuff on your own time. So here's Kieran Smith. Kieran Smith, you add up his last 4. It's 50.6, 51.1, 50.4, 48.8. 48.8 is in parentheses because he really came home in 47.8, but I put it in parentheses because I added a second. That's in the procedure part of it. That's how you got to do it. And then you add all that up. For me, the quick math, I just know 50 times 4 is 320. So I just add up tenths, like 0.6, 0.1, 0.4 is 1.1, or it's like it's 0.7. Yeah, it's 1.1. So it's 1.1 over a 320. And then 48.8 is 1.2 under a 320. So I figured it's 319.9. So I just do the quick math like that. So 319 is the total. I took half of that parenthesis number, that last 100 in parentheses, half of that number, and add it to the total. So I take 24.4 and add it to 319.9. I get 344.3. That's the new total. Now here's the last thing you got to do with this. You got to take the relationship between the 4th 100 and the 3rd 100. Kieran Smith, and this is the reason why I think he can go between 340 and 342 in the 400 meter freestyle. He can swim a 407, and he can do it with a 47.6 back half. He can accelerate by a 1.6 factor. So I take that 1.6 seconds and I subtract it from a 344.3, the new total time. So I got that 344.3 minus 1.6. It's a 342.7. So now that is considered to be his PBT, which is his. Go to the chart on the back here. Darn it, where is that thing? Okay, so I didn't upload it. I'm going to upload it real fast because it has to be on here. Sorry for the delay. It's only going to take a second. Sometimes when I upload things on Slack, it's like it goes in the wrong order. Okay, so now I'm going to refresh my page here. It should be on here. Okay, so the PBT is the predicted time. It's the baseline. The B is for baseline. Thought I had that written down. I forgot about it. Baseline predicted time. We're just calling it that, BPT. And so the 400-meter predicted range means that if you add up those 4 100s and you do all those metrics, you kind of follow the procedure, it'll land you in a BPT range. For Kieran Smith, it lands him in 340. Let's go back to it so I make sure I got it correct. It lands him at 342.7. So you look on here, he's right in there. So he should be able to go 0 to 2 seconds under that. Now, as time goes and stretches, right, the relationship between the predicted range and the ranges have to change. So, if you look at the way I did it, I have a 9-second range, I have an 8-second range, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. That's why it gets kind of kooky at the end. It goes down to 3, 2, 1. Then I've just taken what seems to make a lot of sense to the Olympic trials final for men, because if you do this for these men, it's pretty wild how close it is. So for instance, for Zane Grothy, his PBT is a 345. His actual time is 345. For Brooks Fail, his PBT, if you add up his 4 100s and you do the metrics on it, it's a 347.3. His actual time is 347.0. If you look at Ross Dant, another Olympic trial finalist, he is a PBT of, oh wait, actually, I'm sorry, I got those times a little bit incorrect. Brooks Fail went a 340, his PBT is a 347.0. He went a 348.4. Ross Dant, his PBT is a 351.0, and he went 348. So if you look at his, he's within the second range there at 351. That says they're 1 to 4 seconds under the PBT as his predicted time. So that means that he's actually a little bit over it. So, there's always an exception, right? Ross Dant, Ross Dant is actually right on it. He's a -3. Trey Freeman, you add him up and get his PBT. He's a 348.4, and his actual time is 349. So I would say he's got a better one in him, right? Just like Jake Mitchell. And then you've got Andrew Abruzzo, another example. You add his up, he's a PBT of 353.6, and his lifetime best, his time at trials was a 351. So you go right in the second range there for him, 353 minus 1.4, and he's right in that range. Tom, I actually did this with your athlete who had an outstanding 400 this last weekend. Coaches, if you don't know, Tom had an athlete go 358, male athlete named, is his last name Enyart or Enhard? How do you pronounce that, Tom?
It's Enyart.
Is his name Alex or Alec?
Alec with a C.
Alec Enyart. So I actually looked up his 430 flat. I don't know, is that his lifetime best?
It's 428.
Okay, so it's probably pretty close. One of the 430 flat for him works out to be a PBT of 407.1. And so he's a 350, he's a PBT of 407.1. So he's in that range here, the fourth range. It's a -3 to 9. And so for him, he would be a -9. Right? He's kind of on the high end of the range. Of course, he did that. He basically is on a roll. He could go even faster. I think that what I found is the more advanced the athlete is, and the more experienced they are, and the higher level athlete they are, the closer they are to kind of being in the tight end of the range. And then the more experience they're going to get, Tom, in your case. And I think it's actually, the point I'd really like to make with that. I mean, I think that is true, what I was just saying with that, but I really feel that the more experienced you are as an athlete, the older you are, the more times you've raced the 500 free and the 400 meter free in particular, the more this is going to be accurate. And like if you take someone, for instance, who's only raced the 400-meter free 3 times, you know, you don't really know what they can do. A lot of times those athletes have raced the 500 12 times. Maybe they've raced the 400 only 3 or going to the 4 time. The 400 is going to be a little bit less, you know, you know, it's going to be a little bit less correlated to that 500 free until they get a little bit more experience to make it a little bit more congruent. So I did this with a couple female athletes as well. I did this with Katie Hoff, and it works out basically the same way it does with Katie Ledecky. You look at Ledecky here. She comes home. This is what she does on her American record swim. And that adds up to a 3:23.9, right? Half of a 53.9, which is the time in parentheses, the 26.9. I'm adding that to that 3:23. I get 4,008. That's what we're going to call the new total. And then the new total, because of the fact that she accelerated by a tenth from 54.0 to 53.9 at the end there, we're going to say we're going to take that new total and we're going to subtract 0.1. So not much. It takes the 4,008 to 4,007. So you put the 4,007 on the chart, and she's right in there in the third range there. And so that 4,007, you take off right in the middle, 2 to 6, take off 4, you get her lifetime best of the 356. Katie Hoff, her add up, her PBT was, I believe, 408. Take off 6, might have been 407, take off 5 or 6 for her to get in there. Now, I also looked at some of the other athletes that I've got. Like I've got a girl that's going 424. Her add up for her, I'm doing this off the top here, for her PBT is, I believe, a 429. She's got a little bit of a factor, takes her down to 428. But, you know, she's an open water swimmer. She doesn't really fall into the range. Actually, she does fall into the range, but it's closer for her. You take somebody that's maybe more of an open water swimmer, you get some, you know, they might not be in this kind of a range. I say this is best for people that are have the 400-meter freestyle as one of their best events. So I thought about this and I was going through it. Now, as I was going through it, I was like, it would take me not that much time to basically do the same thing with the 200-yard free and figure out something for 200-meter free based off of yard times. So, you know, I did this. What does it actually mean? It's just really a way of thinking like that. You know, can we develop athletes, for instance, in 500 free on the men's side, to not only go 405, which is, I guess, the next step, but do it in the middle and at the end without having to take the thing out in 45.7 to do it? You know, can we teach our 12, 13, 14-year-old athletes that it does matter how they split the first time they go under 430? You know, do we have the guts to tell somebody, all right, see if you put your feet on the wall at 215 and see if you go under 430 with that, knowing that they've got 6 more years of developing the 500 free? You know, I mean, I think the NC2A program doesn't really lend itself to that. You know, I guess if I was coaching an NC2A team, I would talk, first off, I'd talk about lane lines and just lane placement. You know, I absolutely coach to the heat, you know, in terms of either getting out fast or bringing it home, right? You know, I would not tell somebody just to back half it, just like they're the only person in the pool in a 500 freestyle and an NC2A meet or even a high level club meet with a 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old athlete. But I would use the prelims to do that for sure. I would try to get them to, if they were going to improve their time, improve the back half more. Like if they positive split by 4, I wouldn't just change everything to try to get them to negative split it. I would try to get them to positive split by 1.5 or 2. And I'd work on the old school way of thinking about it is if they positive split by 4 in a 500, if you ever train 400 or 500 yards or meters, have them negative split by 4. They positive split, if they tend to positive split by 2, have them negative split by 2 on those particular types of distances. If they positive split by 10, yeah, have them negative split by 10. that tendency for these athletes, in particular as they get older, shows you, in training, what you can do to kind of approach that. So what do you all think about that, the chart that I threw up there? And what do you think, like what's coming to your mind that you can put into your program, just thinking about things in that way? Because, it's the point two. I don't think I actually classified what it is for the point two, is the coach's emphasis on speed over how it's done. Not just the technique, but how the races are done, how the training's done. What do you think? I had to do this. I had to go through a number of revisions with this because I could not get it to make any sense for my slower athletes. So if you go back to this, just so you guys know how I do this, I do this a lot when I'm doing, like if I put something up on a whiteboard, if you go a 145 to a 150 in the 200 freestyle, you're trying to go plus this from your time in a 200, right? And I'll have a kind of a sequence that's not necessarily a linear thing as they get slower and slower. So like if we're doing 200s, for instance, I'm gonna throw it out there, we get 10 200s, and we want to go with I'll think about my lead athletes. Let's say I've got some boys that go 137, 138. I want them to hold, let's say I want them to hold 152s. They're going to be a plus 12 to 14, 12 to 15, right? I'll write that up on the whiteboard, plus 12 to 15. We'll do 10 twos on 240. Well, I've got these kids that are just, trying to get under 2 minutes, but, they kind of train under 210. The end of the warm-up, no problem, right? Why would I write plus 12 to 15? So when I do these types of things, what I do is I say, okay, the first group, 5-second increment, plus 12 to 15. The next group, we're going to make it a 4-second increment. So it's going to be from, not from 145 to 150, it'll be from 151 to 155, right? And then it won't be a plus 12 to 15. Those people have got to go plus 9 to 12. They're from their lifetime best. And then the next column, it might be 150, or are we here 157, and I might take it down to plus 3. I might say 157 2 minutes. That's your best time. Now you've got to go plus 6 to 9, your lifetime best. And then I'll go 2 minutes, or wherever we are, 201. I'll go kind of plus 2 in there, like 201, 202, 2 minutes to 202, and then it's plus 3 to 6. Or maybe it's going to end up being, I'll look at my group and kind of make it make sense, be challenging, but make sense. And so I kind of do it like that on the whiteboard. So that's how I do it here. Yeah, you have to excuse me just for 1 second. I did not expect this storm to happen. And I got my dogs outside, and one of them is probably going to be begging at the door. Actually, she's not, so I'm not going to deal with it now. You all know with animals, sometimes they get scared, you got to let them in. So when I go through, getting back to the point, when I go through this, you notice that I did the 9 and then I did the 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I made it make sense with each level of athlete. I got the Olympic trial final people. I got Katie Ledecky. It made sense. But then unless I kind of expanded it out, both on the tight end, like the 0 through 10, but then also on the other ends, it wasn't going to make sense. So I had to figure out a way to take my boy that goes 405, plug him in there. My girls that go low 420s, mid 420s, plug them in there and see if that makes sense for their 500 freestyle time. So check it out with your athletes and see if it works for them. All right. Any questions or comments on that? I think maybe after another couple months, we'll have a formula for every